Have you been the one coming up with the name for the team?
Which team?
Team Gemini.
Oh, Gemini. No.
Sounds,
So since it started in 2011, there's just over 1,200 Google developer experts in the world.
A bit of healthy competition helps to get you get your focus right.
You know, I'm trying to think now. What was I meant to say?
My lovely follow-up question would be, do you still sleep? Like where do you take all the time to do your full-time job? You do talks, you travel for the talks, you write articles, and you're really active on socials as well.
Yeah. Do I sleep?
Cool to have you here today. And honestly, I felt like, was it last week or the week before? I saw some cool stuff coming on LinkedIn that you were not in the Netherlands.
Yeah. I traveled to Berlin in Germany. So this was around end of June. Trying to remember which month we're in.
Time goes quick.
Yeah. So I was attending Google I/O Connect. And basically it's an event that's organized by Google as kind of like an extension of their bigger Google I/O. So Google I/O has been going on since 2008, I think, and it's Google's biggest tech event. And this is normally where they showcase the different products, Google Search, Google Maps, everything. And mostly developers look forward to what Google is going to announce and so forth. So this used to be a very large event. I'm talking probably almost 10,000 people attending.
Wow.
This is based in San Francisco at the Google headquarters. But then over time, it started becoming smaller and smaller. And I think because of COVID, they also reduced it. And then it became like an invite-only event. So the only way for you to actually go to San Francisco would be by invitation.
You got one.
Yeah, I was actually privileged to actually get one. So I went there actually in May this year. Till this moment, actually, I'm like, did I really go there? You know, I actually, because this is an event I've been watching. So I'm one of those developers who was excited about it every year. So every May, that's when Google I/O would air. And I used to watch it online. But tune in online, maybe around 7 p.m. because of the time difference. And when I was sitting in the audience there, I just couldn't believe that I was on the other side of the screen. You know, that was actually the surreal moment. You know, I'm like, wait, I'm actually part of this. And then when they make announcements about, so this is the new feature, and then the crowd going crazy, and I'm realizing that I'm going crazy with the crowd as well. You know, that was actually really, really cool.
Full immersion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
What is the crowd doing there? Like, I always see people on Twitter like immediately, this is the new cool thing.
Yeah, so they're always expectant about whatever is now is coming up. And everyone is just waiting with bated breath to hear whatever it's going to be. And then when they announce this thing, it's like loud cheering and clapping and so forth. And the vibe itself is just energetic, which actually makes it really cool, you know, to be there. So we're all watching this in the amphitheater. What was actually crazy was seeing the CEO of Google literally just a few meters away, in front of me, and I'm hearing the announcements that he's saying, as well as other people, other product people at Google. So it was really crazy being there. So they created these mini versions of Google I/O to give people an opportunity to kind of experience the I/O, just like I did in San Francisco. So they created regional-based I/Os. So they started last year having Miami for the US. Then for EMEA region, they had Amsterdam, actually. So it was here last year. And then I think it was Bengaluru for the Middle East. And then I think it was Singapore for the Asia side. This year, they changed it up. I'm not sure if they still did Miami. But for EMEA, they decided Berlin was the venue, or rather the city. And then they're still going to do Bengaluru. I'm not sure if they're going to do maybe Singapore or something for the Asia region. So it was probably a 3-day trip that I spent in Berlin. The first night we actually had like a nice mixer, community dinner, just interacting with everyone from the EMEA region. I'm talking, these are developers that you normally interact with online that you finally get to see in person. Some of them actually friends of mine because I used to live in South Africa. So I was also part of the Sub-Saharan Africa region. So it was really cool to see all these people together and actually meet new people. And then the day after that was actually the IO Connect. So you get updates from the various teams. So in my case, I was particularly looking forward to the Android information because that's my space.
Yeah.
And then even them talking about AI. And then it's mostly just socializing, getting to know people. There are drinks available throughout the day. It was actually a very hot day on that day. I think that was the only downside. We all were craving a fan of some sort. It was really, really blazing hot.
There was no announcement of a Google fan.
We actually got these mini fans.
Oh.
So everyone, almost everyone actually had these things, and you just see people just fanning themselves. I was one of them. I couldn't stand the heat. I definitely got out of the kitchen. So it was really cool just to connect with people. And then the day after we had a summit, so to speak, or they called it a GDE forum. And then we got to spend time at the Google Berlin offices. That was cool. I spent the whole day there. It was a very eventful 3 days. But one of those I actually cherish. So I guess May and June were really special months.
Wow. Yeah. Super lifetime experience, right?
Yes, definitely.
So, but what we are interested in is how do you get to the point that you're getting invited to events like this?
Wow. It's quite a journey, I guess, to actually get there. So there is some community involvement that you can do. Google has got this thing called a Google Developer Group. And the idea is it's not really affiliated with Google. So it's mostly communities that meet together sometimes once a month and just basically talk. And sometimes you'll actually have speakers who will give these lightning talks, talk about Google technology and so forth. So the idea is you're sharing knowledge around Google technologies. So these are developers from any space. So Android developers, Angular developers, Go and so forth. Basically people who make use of Google's technologies like Google Cloud, for instance. So maybe you might have a talk, you might have your experience and so forth. So you can actually, normally within every country, you will normally find at least one of these Google developer groups. And Google will normally provide funding for them to be able to host certain big events. But the meetups, usually it's self-funded. So they'll meet up once a month. They'll try and find a venue somewhere. And then sometimes maybe there might be pizza or drinks afterwards. But so the idea is just to connect and so forth. And when I actually started with the Google developer groups, that's actually where my speaking journey started. I actually learned a lot from other speakers who actually gave me so many insights into the different technologies that I was actually using. I learned a lot from speakers then who were now actually quite influential. Some of whom actually went on to work for Google. So the Google developer groups is normally like the starting point. Yeah. We actually do have one. I think it's the Dutch Android group. I'm not sure if we actually do have a specific venue, but the idea is also to meet once a month. And so I was very involved with that. Someone convinced me to give a talk. I was very nervous. This was in, I think maybe 2018, 2019. Someone convinced me, to just give a talk. at a conference. So one of these Google developer groups was hosting a conference, and I decided, okay, I'm just gonna do this. Nervous as hell when I gave this talk. I was probably shaking, that was actually one of the first times that I delivered this. I think the audience was maybe 100 people. Very nerve-wracking. Yes, I think from that point on, just taking on the feedback and then just carrying on with just delivering talks. The idea with me is that I like to, I always realize that sometimes when I'm working on something, and we've probably all experienced it, you're working on something, you're trying to figure it out, and you're stuck, you know?
Yeah.
Then you're online searching on Google, then you end up on Stack Overflow, and sometimes even Stack Overflow doesn't even help you, you know? And now you're even spending more and more time. And it was kind of like that for me, where I would spend hours on this thing and I realize, oh man, this is really frustrating. Eventually I'd get to the solution. But then I was like, you know what? This could actually be my process or everything that I've gone through now.
Mm-hmm.
Someone out there could actually find this beneficial. Someone out there could probably learn from what I've just done now to actually get to this point, especially because I spent hours trying to find a solution online. I didn't find anything. So let me try and help that one person who might need this information. Maybe there might not be, maybe there might. And so I started writing articles. So I'll just write my experience from there. Sometimes I even, instead of an article, I actually create a talk out of that. And so that's kind of like how it started. It was always just birthed out of my own personal experience. And if I see a feature that Google has announced or someone else has given a talk around a feature, and then I'm like, oh, okay, let me try it in my application. Let me see how it's going to work and so forth. And maybe I might have some pain points and so forth. So I then make that into a talk, even into an article. So that's kind of how the journey of talking or giving articles actually started.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does for a part, I think. Are you still nervous, by the way, giving a talk?
I think what's interesting is that I don't think the nervousness has gone away, or at least not as much. It's not, the intensity is not as much as it was in the beginning. It's there. My heart beats fast. Before I jump onto the stage, I can feel my heart like in my throat type of thing. But then 5 minutes into the talk, it's gone. And I think it's really just, they do say like if you're not nervous, then you don't care enough. So if you do, then it means you do care.
Exactly,
So I guess this is just me just wanting to make sure that the people who are hearing the talk really take something away, something beneficial, because that's always been my goal.
Yeah.
When I give that talk, I want at least one person to be like, oh, that's actually going to help me, you know? So I think I'm nervous around, is someone going to get that thing, Yeah.
Because it seems like from everything or the two things you just touched upon, like from writing articles on Medium into doing talks, you have this really big feeling of helping others, sharing knowledge. Where does that passion originate from? How did you develop this?
I think it stemmed from, I'm trying to remember now, 2006, 2007. So in a other life, I was actually a high school teacher. So I actually taught music to high school students. So this is from the beginning grade up until those who actually finish. And so I basically had students from all ages, so to speak. And I remember back then, whenever I used to teach, so I used to teach the kids how to play violin, viola, cello, and the double bass. Not to say I play all four. I play the violin, but the other three, viola, cello, and double bass, they're kind of similar. So you can kind of apply the same concept, so to speak. So my main instrument then was the violin. So I used to teach them how to play the violin as well as music theory. But it was particularly the music, playing the violin or the viola, the cello, or the double bass. It was this, and it was very basic, by the way. So it's like just playing a note and then going to the next note, playing a note and going to the next note. I think maybe towards the end of the term, they're playing a song, right? And so it was this aspect where I think we're kind of getting closer to learning a song, that when they finally do it and their excitement and the eyes lighting up and like, oh, yes, they all want to do this and they're just excited. And sometimes you can't even control them in the classroom because they're just too excited about what they're doing. That was really fun, imparting knowledge and seeing someone benefit in that way. That for me was like, I enjoy doing this, and I'll gladly continue doing this. And so fast forward later, so when I actually started software development, I kind of had the same experience. This time I was the one who was being taught. So I joined this dev company. So far, it's the longest I've spent at a company. So 5.5 years so far. And so while I was there, when I started off, I was a junior. I was a junior developer, and I did backend development using PHP. And so there were many seniors at the time when I started, and maybe 4 or 5 different seniors who were above me, who were very patient with me. And they actually took the time to really teach me. And it wasn't like one of those where they were hand-holding me. And I like that approach, actually, where they were more taking the approach of teaching me how to fish so that I could feed myself for a lifetime, that concept.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful one.
Yeah. So I really like that approach, and it helped me grow to the developer that I am today. I was able to advance from being a junior to being a senior, and for me, it was a given when I then had junior developers who then joined the company, who were then trying to learn, how to write software and so forth. I mean, there was even this one guy. He was in a whole different industry when he joined the company, so it was a complete switch for him, like complete 360. He had never written a line of code. Today, if I'm not mistaken, the company where he is, he's like the VP of engineering.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And this is someone I mentored, and someone who was really interested in what I was doing, and I was more than willing to impart and help him on his journey. So seeing journeys like that, seeing eager developers who just want to expand their knowledge as much as possible, for me, I think that's kind of where it birthed, just having this person light up and like, oh yeah, that's actually really cool, and then see them do something great with it. It's something that has stuck with me, and something I always want to just continue doing in whatever way that I can. So even if it's with the way I would deliver my talk or the way I would write my article, I always am intentful of how the other person's going to receive it, and I need to make sure that they get as much information as possible. So even when I write an article, it's as though I'm preparing for a talk. I don't just write it down. I actually do extensive research and put the links to the documentation and so forth.
Nice.
I really do take the time just to make sure that the other person, at least one, will get something out of it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Huh?
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is.
Thank you.
Yeah, but like I heard like another podcast a couple weeks ago, and there people also talked about like writing articles on Medium, and especially developers, if they see something cool and they read something on Medium, what tends to happen is they read it, they see the answer, they copy it, they give it a try, and you don't give any kudos or any credits to the one who actually took the time to be able to share this. So even a clap, I think it's called on Medium, or subscribe to follow you. And that really also shows that I don't want to say appreciation, because I appreciate all the writers on Medium for sure, but it says a lot about you that you continue doing these kind of things just for the small glimpse of people that are actually saying, hey, thank you, man, you're doing a really awesome job. And especially because it's not part of the full-time job you're doing next to it.
Yes.
So my lovely follow-up question would be, do you still sleep? Like where do you take all the time to do your full-time job? You do talks, you travel for the talks,
Yeah.
you write articles, and you're really active on socials as well.
Yeah. Do I
you,
sleep?
you have a family as well.
Yes.
How do you combine all these things?
Yeah. I like the fact that so like I mentioned or hinted earlier, so I used to stay in South Africa. So that was my home before I came to the Netherlands. Very different work culture to the Netherlands. So there isn't really a work-life balance. So it is kind of a given that you are going to work after hours. And it's kind of expected. If you don't, then you're not serious enough. Yes, it can be quite intense. And so when I came here, it actually made it a lot easier. Actually, also because I actually didn't have as many opportunities as I do now than I did back in South Africa, and I also learned to embrace the work-life balance a lot. So yes, despite all of that, I do try to strike a balance between everything. So I'm not always coding. I do try to make sure that there is enough time for my family. And then thankfully, with regards to talks and stuff, I don't always have to work on them, which is nice. So what usually happens is that conferences would announce their call for papers, which is basically saying, hey, we're going to have this conference. Usually maybe it's like 4 months in advance. And then they're like, 4 months from now, we're going to have our conference. It's going to be based in this city. Please submit your proposals. And then we're going to select them and so forth. So usually what we do as potential speakers, we tend to submit hypotheticals. We don't really work on them. So we're like, oh, there's this conference in 4 months' time. I'm going to start working on this thing right now, because at the end of the day, you could actually end up working on something that might not get selected. So we tend to put things into high gear when we get the acceptance from the conference.
Right.
That's usually a month before. I know it can be tight. It can be tight. Sometimes they would give you a bit longer, but most of them actually tend to only let you know like a month before. And so that month before, yes, it can get busy, but I also try to strike a balance between it. So I still do my 8 to 5, and then maybe work on an hour or two on the talk itself. So sometimes if a talk could be code based, so I would try and polish up my code. So I have an open source app, open source Android app. And so I would then try and add this feature that I'm going to be talking about. So spend some time there. And then maybe 2 weeks or so spending time doing that. And then the other 2 weeks, then actually working on the slides. But it's always like trying to strike a balance of, okay, maybe 1 or 2 hours in the evening, or maybe only on weekends. So maybe a few hours or so, maybe on a Saturday, and then the rest is like family time. Yeah. So it's always, the idea is always to try and strike a balance. Otherwise, yes, you can potentially reach burnout if you're not careful. Yeah.
You have a really tight time management discipline going on there.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
That's how they do it.
Yeah, you should.
One mystery explained.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are there, because this is, I think, a nice tip for people who also want to go in that direction, so to be like you and write articles, speak at events, be a GDE, a Google Developer Expert. So are there any more tips you have for people who, because I think the time management one is a very, very good one, a very important one.
Yeah, and the abstracts as well.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, if the intent is to become a Google Developer Expert, so like in my case, that's what I am, a Google Developer Expert. And so I get a lot of people who actually don't even know what that is.
Maybe you can explain.
Yes. So this is a program that has been around since around 2011. And fun fact, it actually started in Asia. If I'm not mistaken, it was Japan. And so the idea is that back then, technology wasn't as big as it is now. You didn't really have as many opportunities, even podcasts and stuff. I don't think they were not as big as they are now. So when you contributed to the community, it was mostly you giving a talk or you organizing some sort of conference event or meetup and so forth. And so it was birthed around just this early type of community involvement or community engagement that Google were like, you're actually making a difference and we really like what you're doing. And so they birthed this thing called the Google Developer Experts program, which is basically recognition of people who are creating a huge impact within the communities in one or the other. And so it is a title that you are given. So it's not really like a licensing thing. It actually is a title that you're given. And there are currently just over 1,200. So since it started in 2011, there's just over 1,200 Google Developer Experts in the world. And it's crazy to think of it that way because we are over, I think, 800,000 developers around the world, and only 1,200 of those are actually Google Developer Experts. And so currently, in order for you to qualify, you basically need to have an active contribution in one or many areas. So you are giving talks at conferences or at meetups. You have a podcast that could be an example. You have a YouTube channel. You are writing articles. You have open source software. And so I kind of have most of them. So I write articles, I speak at conferences, and I have open source contributions. And the idea is to be consistent with it. So if you have a desire to be a part of that program, then over the past year, you needed to be consistently doing that contribution. So if it's writing articles, speaking at conferences, in fact, the more that you do, the better your chances. And also the impact, the number of people you are actually impacting with this thing that you're doing. The article that you're writing, how many people are reading it, the conferences that you're speaking at, how many people are actually attending your conferences, all that stuff, your subscribers on YouTube or your podcast, all of that stuff. That actually counts in your favor. So what you normally do is you'll build what is called a community CV. And from there, you would detail all your contributions over the past year. Now, you can't apply by yourself to be part of the program. You're actually invited to join the program. And it'll be a recommendation from either a Googler, so a Google employee, or a GDE, as we're called in short. And so a GDE would then recognize the potential GDE and say, I like what Tim or Anthony are actually doing. I would like to propose or nominate them for the program. And then they would then submit their community CV. And that's the first part of the interview process, so to speak. It's the application. So if your application makes the cut, then you are then invited to an interview process. This is where it gets a bit busy. So you will then have 2 interviews. But the second one is based on you passing the first one. So the first interview will be with an existing GDE. They will then ask you, the idea behind this is, are you chasing the title? Or are you passionate about your community? So this is their job, to kind of assess where you're at. Are you really just going it because, I heard the GDE program is really cool, it's got perks and so forth, so I really want to join this? Or is it just a nod to something that you're already doing already? Yep. So they will really just check your heart. And so if they're happy, then you will then move on to the next stage of the interview process, which is an interview with someone from Google. So there are various categories for becoming a GDE. You can be a GDE for Angular, for Google Cloud, for Android, for Flutter, even Workspace. Google Workspace is also one of the categories. So there are various categories. ML, MI, AI is also one of those. So the interview with a Googler will be someone from that category that you're applying to. So in my case, I had someone from the Android team at Google interview me. And so their idea behind it is, what is your expertise around this field that you're purporting to know and so forth? And so it's really going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Do you really know this category very well? Can you actually deliver talks about this, confidently and so forth? And if they're happy, then you will then receive a welcome email after signing an NDA. So we're all expected to sign an NDA, because part of the perks about being a GDE is that you will get privileged information from time to time, upcoming features, upcoming products, and so forth. Sometimes we're even asked to test out certain things as well. So because it's not in the public domain yet, we shouldn't tell anyone about it, but we are free to test it and so forth. Maybe even help prepare our organizations for these upcoming features and so forth. So that is one of the perks. And so so those 2 interviews, then you're welcomed into the program. The thing about it is that you will get the title, but you can also lose it.
Ooh.
So that's part of the reason why we are so active.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why we still deliver talks and so forth, because it's one thing to have a track record of a year and so forth, and then getting the title and then stopping. They actually want you to continue with that contribution. So as long as you're active, you keep the title.
Yeah.
If not, at the end of every year, they review it and it can actually get taken away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough, but it also makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It does mean something then, the title,
Yes.
because you
Yeah.
really work hard for it.
Yes. Yes.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess to go back to your initial question of
Yeah.
how do you actually get opportunities for these
Yeah.
events? So yes, so being a GDE, one of them is opportunities to travel. So when I speak at a conference, so when a conference accepts me as a speaker, I can actually get travel support, which is nice. Yes.
That's nice.
So within every region, so as long as the conference is within your region, you can actually get support to speak at these conferences. And then sometimes Google might organize an event. So like the one in Berlin that I went to. So they will organize it and make this open invitation. They will cover your travel and so forth to
Sweet.
actually bring you there,
Mhm.
which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of it. Just having access or these invitations coming directly from Google. Yeah, it's a really nice.
Kind of VIP treatment, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's super interesting, Ahmed. It's like you work hard, but you get the perks. So you get there are rewards, which are definitely worth it, I would think.
Yeah.
So are there any other challenges you have doing this? You talked about some of them. Maybe there are more.
I guess it's also sometimes as GDEs you might actually feel pressure to always have a talk, and that's not the case. So and yes, there is no magic number of saying, okay, these are the number of contributions that you need to make on a yearly basis. It's more on you need to still be active in contributing. So sometimes I guess it's hard because you are now trying to strike this balance and trying to apply to conferences, because sometimes the conferences are the ones that have the bigger impact. Sometimes maybe you don't even have the time to work on an article. So like I said, for me, writing an article is not just I'm just typing 1,000 words. It's some research that I actually do. And so some might find it stressful when they don't get conferences that accept them. And they're like, oh no, am I going to lose my title and so forth? So not realizing that the conference is not the only thing that you actually need to do. You can try and contribute in other ways as well. So I guess that's one thing where you're not trying to stress and like, okay, I'm applying to this conference, because it definitely is not a given. It would be nice if being a GDE guarantees you a spot at a conference. Unfortunately not. That's not the case. Some of these conferences do a blind evaluation.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they don't actually show any names or anything like that. So you are not biased towards, Anthony's a GDE. So I'm going to just say yes to his talk. No. So the idea is to remove that bias from there and really just base it on the abstract, on the information they're presenting.
Interesting.
And your abstract needs to be very detailed. It's very important. I've evaluated some potential papers as well, and people who just say, I'm going to talk about how this is great. Something along those lines. And then that's it. That's the abstract. Okay. I'm like, no, that's not okay. So usually what they look for is you actually giving maybe a description, like an introduction of what you're going to talk about. Then you need to mention key takeaways. And I'm talking maybe at least 5, if you can. And then learning points as well, at least 5. And then maybe even add a conclusion to there as well. If you are able to do that, then you are guaranteed, or almost guaranteed, to actually have a good presentation that's worth 35 minutes on the stage. But if you can't come up with those things, then you're likely going to run into issues trying to come up with your different slides and so forth. So for me, I think my challenge this year was trying to come up with a talk for 2024. Because of the fact that AI has become the topic. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to talk about AI, and I actually decided to do an all eggs in one basket thing this year. Usually I submit 3 proposals to conferences. So 3 different talks, 3 different ideas, so to speak, sometimes hypotheticals. And then I decided for this one conference, just one topic. AI, because I built this really cool feature using AI. I'm like, this conference is going to definitely say yes to this. And they said no, which sucked. Yes. No, they were definitely like, no. We've had enough AI talks or proposals. Nope. We're not. So we need you to submit some core topics and so forth. Yeah. So that was a changing point for me. I was like, okay, AI might be the talk of the town, but you definitely need to find other topics to talk about.
There's maybe a bit of AI fatigue going on.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But how do you make sure? I mean, still 1,200 is not that much, but how do you make sure you don't, not hijack, but is there some sort of rule like, you will talk about these kind of topics, you will talk about these?
Yeah.
Because what if, Google releases a new feature and every GDE in Europe thinks, for Berlin, I'm going to submit a talk about AI or about this topic.
Yeah.
Is that not, are you not competing against each other?
Yes, we are actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing as well, especially within our own categories. Because at the end of the day, we also want to still contribute. We probably all have the same heart. It's not just about the title. It's not about, we need this activity. And it's really just about, I would really like to speak at this community. I'd really like to deliver my talk there and really just make an impact, which is my goal actually, where I'm like, whenever I'm trying to apply to a conference, I always like envision this audience that's really going to take away a lot from what I deliver. And so, it's that eagerness, to want to deliver your talk, and you will put in as much work as you can. And at the end of the day, you are actually going to have another fellow Android GDE, in my case, who might also have the same idea. And it really just boils down to when the evaluators of the conference are looking at it and they're like, okay, which one's better? Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, but
it's
also scary.
A bit of healthy competition helps to get you
for sure.
Get your focus right. And I really like the format you gave for the abstract, because you can use it for anything, right? Also for a presentation in your company or so. It's like a really nice. Okay, if I have this, start from here, and then I can make the slides.
Yeah. The only question that boiled down for me was like you said, you submitted 3 papers.
Yes.
And you mentioned, well, whenever it gets accepted, that's the moment I start investing time into it. You'll probably get my question, but what happens if they accept in the same month all 3 different talks for different conferences?
Yeah.
Are you still able to say, sorry guys, I got invited to the other 2. It's been enough.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is that it is a two-way street. So you can actually assess things. So sometimes we can apply to as many conferences, like literally like one of those until one of them sticks, type of thing. Because at the end of the day, you don't know who's going to say yes to you. Like I said, it's not a guarantee, especially because you're a GDE. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get accepted into a conference. So all these conferences will advertise, okay, cool, we have spots open. You're going to put in your name in, and maybe you might get an instance where more than one conference actually accepts you, or even in my case, maybe all 3 talks got accepted. So when the conferences usually use Sessionize as their tool, so sessionize.com as their tool for advertising their call for papers and so forth. The nice thing about Sessionize is that there is a button when your talk gets accepted to say confirm participation. So they'll say, congratulations, your talk has been accepted. Please confirm your participation. And you can decline and say, okay, I already have another talk, so I'm going to say no.
You're too late.
Yes. Some people actually have delivered more than one talk. I've seen that happen. How they prepare for that, I have no idea. And these are both like 35-minute talks each.
They must have no families. No job, maybe.
Probably.
Just neutral people take the stage. People just tend to oversee how much time it actually takes to really prepare a good talk, but it's a lot of investment.
It is.
Yeah, cool.
It's always more than you think or than you want.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really cool though. Like I really like these stories, just hearing your journey and hearing, I don't know, like these kind of people that really just whenever they talk, you will hear their passion. It just shines from you. I think that's really cool, and that's something that honestly does inspire me. Like I'm a fan, and I'm really curious. Like, who is your inspiration? What are you still aiming for? What kind of maybe another GDE that you think like, okay, that's really a mentor for me or something I really look upon?
Oh wow, I had quite a number of GDEs who actually inspired me. And I think it was just the way that they would present information, and they made it look so easy. You know, they would give these talks so effortlessly. Wow, that's really cool, you know. And some of them are like just calm and collected on stage, and the nature of the stuff they delivered as well. Even instances when I started talking, there was this one. I think right now he's probably I think he's the VP of engineering for developer relations. I think at JetBrains. If I'm not mistaken, it was him actually who I got some tips around talking, how to present and so forth. And till this day, it's what I actually do. Oh. So when you're doing your slides, you should aim to not have paragraphs on the slides. Some people actually put the information they want to actually say on the slides. So basically creating a script, so to speak, and then that's the slide. Wow. And then now you have a situation where you as a speaker have got this huge paragraph that's there, and then your audience is also seeing this paragraph that you have there. Now, what people don't realize is that most of the time our eyes can get very distracted. So we're not going to listen to you, the speaker, reading that paragraph on this on your slide. We're rather going to read ahead of you. So now you're distracting your audience. Now you're making them read this very long paragraph and not actually listen to you. And so anything that you have on your slides should be mnemonic devices for you. So it should trigger a memory where when you see this thing that says TechLab, And you're like, oh, so TechLab was started so you already know the information around that one point. You don't have the entire information about the history of TechLab on this slide or on this like a whole paragraph, because then your audience is going to read it while you're trying to talk about it, and now you don't really have their attention. So the idea is to always have just points, bullet points on there, and have those as triggers for yourself in order for you to go, oh, yes, I know what this is. And then I've also gone one step further, and this was based on Google. So I always used to like how Google would present their product updates. So they do it maybe, I think, every fortnight or so. They use these really fancy animations, and I was like, oh, this would be so cool to be able to do it maybe in Keynote or whatever, or Google Slides. I've never been able to do it. It's like animates, and it goes and so forth. So I've kind of imitated a similar approach where when I'm moving between in my code, for instance, and I'm stepping through code, what I do is I always would have multiple slides of the same piece of code, but then I would have certain areas grayed out, and then I'll have a line always brighter than the rest. So the rest will be grayed out like a pale gray color that I would actually make it. And so then I'll make the next line, and then I'll make the previous line gray again, and so forth. So that by the time I'm stepping through the code, it looks like I'm jumping down a line. And so when my viewers or whoever's listening to my presentation, they're not distracted by the entire code block. They only focus on the part that I've highlighted in color, and then the rest is grayed out. So they're stepping through this with me. And then when you do it in Google Slides or whatever it is, it actually looks like you're animating between the two. So that actually inflates the number of slides for my talk every single time. For a 35-minute talk, I probably have maybe 96 slides in my presentation. Mainly because of this. Mainly because it's these subtle things that will actually help your audience stay engaged with you. So just using this little bit of color and lack of color just to really just reel them into focusing on the right path. So I've always liked presenters who do stuff like that. I have two from South Africa who actually went on to work for Google. I thought that was really cool. They were GDEs, and then they went on to work for Google. So that was like a really nice nod. There are others as well from around the world. So some who were based in India, some who are even Googlers themselves, who just the way they presented and just their energy on stage, when you just see someone just really enjoying what they're delivering, it really just encourages you as well. You're like, oh, I actually would like to do it that way, So that's really cool. Yeah, I have quite a bit. Yeah,
it's really good and really good tips though. Like for me, always like a really painful thing to hear after presentation is when someone asks, could you maybe send me over the slides, because I would love to check them or to see the information you shared on them. Because that indeed means that probably they want to read the lines that you put on there.
Yes.
And you're actually competing with your slides. So
yes.
It's a really, really good tip.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. You can also, and I mean, there are instances where the nose can hit you. And it does happen with me once or twice. You're there on stage, and then that trigger. Oh, TechLab.
What was it again?
What was it again? I'm trying to think now. What was I meant to say? So you can use speaker notes if it really helps you. What I would encourage is that you still try and practice your presentation beforehand. It can happen while you're delivering this talk, and everything just like it's an exam. Sometimes it feels like an exam for some people, and you just forget, And when you see that note, that speaker note for that particular slide, sometimes it's like, then you then go on to. Sometimes you end up not even needing the notes, so you can add it in as a backup. for you to be able to reference it if you really don't want to put that much pressure on yourself to just remember an entire paragraph from just one word, TechLab. You're like, okay, I don't know what this is. So certain people actually do use speaker notes. You just need to be aware that some conferences don't support it. So that could be tricky as well. So don't rely on it fully, because you might get to a point where the only thing you have is just the slides. And they're like, sorry, we don't have an extra screen for you to show you your speaker notes. And then, oh man, I'm screwed.
So bring your own screen or write it on your hand like you used to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very good tips.
Thank you.
I think you're helping a lot of people. I'm going to use some of those tips myself.
Happy to help.
Thanks.
A really nice last question, because I'm super curious. Like, what's next? What are you working on, and what is the rest of the year gonna bring?
Yeah. So there is. I'm very passionate. So outside of AI, so AI is something I've been looking into. But in addition to that, I really just love creating user interfaces that work for everyone. So I really do want to look into accessibility deeply. And then also just UI itself, just making UI work across multiple devices. And I'm glad that Google has been spending time in that area. So this is a feature that I implemented within the Ball app last year. So Google introduced this thing called window size classes. And it's basically a tool or a library that you can then add to your app, and it will grant you access to determine the amount of window space available for your app at any particular point in time. Now, the thing about this window size class is that it changes. And with an Android app, when you rotate the phone, for instance, you already have a different window size class. Yep. So what they did was they realized developers were using this logic of, is it a phone? Is it a tablet? And that becomes bad over time. So over the past, I guess, 5 years or so, the device market has changed drastically. You don't just have a phone and a tablet anymore. You now have a flip device. Yeah. You now have a foldable. You have a watch, a smartwatch. People can even see your Android app on an Android based laptop. So a Chromebook, for instance, you can actually have Android apps there as well. Or you could even have Android TV, So the apps can be on any screen size. And so you can't assume that your app is going to be on a phone or on a tablet. Yeah. You now have to change that logic. Also, because people realized, different manufacturers started introducing within Android functionality where you can have a split screen. So you can have two apps next to each other. And people do that, especially like if it's on a foldable device or a tablet where there's more screen space. You're going to have an article on the left. You're going to have maybe YouTube on the right-hand side. I've seen people who do that. Like they want to multitask and so forth. So you can't assume that your app is going to occupy the entire screen space. Mm-hmm. It's only going to get a small portion. And they can also resize it. So, which means the space can get smaller or bigger at any point in time. So to break away from this, is it a phone, is it a tablet? They introduced this thing called window size classes, which is basically categorizes the amount of space that your app has at any particular point in time into 3 categories: compact, medium, or expanded. Compact would be a typical phone in portrait mode. Expanded would be when you rotate it, it's now expanded, or if it's like a medium-sized tablet, that will kind of be there. Yeah. Then a big screen tablet will then be expanded, or even like a laptop screen will also be like, so if it's occupying the entire screen space. Those are typically the 3 sizes. And so the idea is that you will then use this logic or this awareness that, the space I have right now is a compact, so I'm going to do this. I'm only going to display certain things. I'm not going to try and put everything on this on the one screen, because the user doesn't have that much space anyway. Mm-hmm. So the bigger the screen gets, then you start adding more features. You start adding, maybe if it's an article, a news article type app, maybe if you now have more space, you could have on the left the list of articles and on the right the article that has been opened. So now the user has got two different options now that they can actually use. I've seen people who have a foldable device, and then you have the video playing on the top, and then the bottom you have the controls. So that type of thing. So you can utilize this logic to know, so if I have this much space, this is what I'm going to do. So I did implement that within the Ball app, within the brands. So I was in Team Gemini last year. And so we added this thing called brands, which is basically where the different brands like Samsung or Apple and so forth can showcase different campaigns. So brand campaign pages that will be running at a particular point in time. And so within the Android app, with collaboration with the designer, Gemini designer, I was then able to, he actually developed designs for compact, medium, and expanded. And then I incorporated those designs using this logic. Oh, is it a compact? Is it a medium? So when you actually view this page, these screens on certain devices, it'll actually adapt to the type of window size class that is currently active.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's something I'm currently working on right now. I'm going to be speaking about that in September, my next conference in Lisbon. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So this also reminds me of responsive design.
Yes.
On the front end,
yes.
CSS and queries.
Yeah.
But there we also had sometimes the problem if you enlarge the fonts.
Yes.
Then it kind of you have to take that into account, because else it kind of messes up your big space. Can be actually a small space.
Yeah. So that's the idea actually, where you are aware of these little things, because you can't assume that, everyone is just going to use this small font. No, some people are going to want to expand things to make things better for themselves. So being aware of these things and being aware of the user. I actually read somewhere today that someone said, don't develop your app for a platform, develop your app for the user.
Love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Have you been the one coming up with the name for the team?
Which team?
Team Gemini.
Oh, Gemini. No.
Did you get any extra credits for that?
I wish. No.
Suspicious.
It just so happened that Google announced Gemini at the end of it. I was like, yeah.
I was like, this doesn't make sense.
Or too much sense.
Yeah, maybe it does.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because I think it's really inspiring what you're doing. If people want to reach out to you or just read your articles, how can they find you online?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'm on Twitter, or X as it's called. In fact, I think they even asked if they should rename it back to Twitter, and I definitely would say yes. Please do. So Twitter/X, you can find me at Ahmed_Tikiwa. Yeah. And then on LinkedIn, Ahmed Tikiwa, you can just search for me there. Medium, you can also find me by my name, I think. I'm not sure of the actual URL. So I am actively on Medium, on Twitter, as well as on LinkedIn. I try to share as much as I can. And then other than that, I also have an open source app, which you can find on GitHub. I think even if you search for me by name, you can also find it there. And I'm always looking for collaborators. So if anyone wants to, in the Android space, wants to contribute and add features and so forth, people are welcome to. Those are the main ones.
Super cool. And we will, of course, put them in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Ahmed.
No, thank you, guys. Thank you.
Really nice conversation.
Thank you.
Learn a lot again.
Thank you. Yeah, I had fun. Thank you, guys.